in your show is a
Yes,
property of man.
Can we use these? Or is this okay?
I hope so.
Just hope they work. There's a lot of gravity up here. I can feel it. Look at this guy in the picture, man. He will mess you up. Wow. It's big. It's a big picture. Yes, Vic, greetings.
Very nice to meet you. So I'd like to begin by taking you through some really depressing slides, if you don't mind. I'm sorry about this.
Yeah, that'd be great.
But so
Because I
can
was
we
really upbeat. Let's knock that down.
click through these?
Oh,
Okay.
yeah, oh, yeah.
So we're very concerned about public perceptions of science, as are you. And there's some really depressing numbers. I'm just going to go through them rapidly. So first of all, only 40-some% of Americans right now believe that global warming is caused by human activity.
Less than half is a
Less
problem.
than half.
When it comes to elections, that's a big deal. No, it is. I mean, that's what I'm talking about.
And as a consequence of that, very few people actually believe that this is a problem that we'll face in our lifetimes.
Oh, you'll see.
So
No, I mean, it's a big deal.
in the case of human evolution, we also have a similar problem. Only 19% of Americans, according to Gallup, believe in unfettered human evolution driven by natural physical laws. There's about 30% who believe in something called intelligent design, and about a constant number who believe that we were all created 6,000 years ago in an instant. And as another consequence of this is really how it's being taught in schools. Here in red, you see all the states where there is no mention of human evolution in the formal school curricula. Some mention biological evolution, but not human evolution, not evolution of men, of mankind.
He means humankind. No, I mean, it's just a new habit. Like, for example, my mom was a woman, just for example.
Yeah.
Just she's right there. It's not unusual, no.
But we'll ask you about her later, actually. So there's also a depressing trend to use public taxpayer money, taxpayer dollars, to fund creation education in public schools in several states, in charter schools and voucher schools. And of course, there are mainstream politicians who don't believe in this at all. Now,
Yeah, you have the picture of the guys. How many of you running for president believe in evolution? 3 of them don't.
yes,
you
3 of the 4
imagine-
Republican governors.
Yeah, if these guys got to be in charge, well, they are in charge, they're governors. And the world's, the most technically advanced, at least the biggest innovations like Google come out of the US. And to have people that don't believe in the process of science running the show is just a formula for disaster.
Absolutely.
It is,
So, look, Google is a scientific company. We're very science-driven, quantitative, and this is particularly depressing to us. Here's a belief in evolution.
Gosh, look at this.
And I know that some of your recent criticism of pseudoscience in general really is based on arguments of economic competitiveness.
That's for me, it is, yeah. Like you guys, how many of you watched the Science Guy show? Woo! I love you, man. Whoa, man. No, so if we produce a generation of science students that don't believe in science, you're not going to have the next Google, whatever that is. You will not have the next generation of employees at Google. Texas Instruments had to advertise for, engineers in Maryland because they were concerned. Texas Instruments not called Maryland Instruments because of the quality of the Maryland school system in comparison.
Absolutely. So hopefully you'll help us, you'll arm us
It's
with
all
the
me,
instruments to
yeah.
fight this. Because our reaction in observing this is to be pretty depressed. We don't know how exactly to counteract these forces. We hope you'll teach us about that. Maybe actually this would be more appropriate considering the subject of our conversation today.
That's, for those who don't know, that's my old boss there.
So let's begin there. We can remove our friend from the screen.
That's not really my old boss. It's a guy I used to sit next to.
So my first question is really an easy one. You've seen the numbers. Now, you're a science educator. I'm a scientist. Are those dismal numbers a failure of my profession or yours?
Oh, it's me. It's all me. No, but what's happened in the U.S. is the people teaching or asked to teach science are not especially qualified to teach it because the money's just not very good. If you come out of engineering school and you can get a job making what you guys make here or get a job making a third of that, going to a facility where the paint's peeling and it smells like urine and some people literally are carrying weapons, what would you do? I mean, if I were king of the forest, and I'm not, but the longest journey starts with a single step. So our first problem is educating science educators.
Right.
But if you have school boards, in other words, we have to do everything all at once. If you have school boards who are insisting that creationism be put in textbooks, then that's a hard row to hoe.
Yeah.
But we got to do it.
Well, to what extent is this actually a uniquely American phenomenon? Has this happened in other countries?
Doesn't seem to. Yeah.
No?
And you can see on that gross domestic product chart or handwritten graph. No, really, whatever you call it, the thing. It's not. I mean, how do we use the word chart? It's a graph. It's a depiction. You see that industrialized countries in general believe in the process of science, and evolution is the main idea in all of life science, so they believe in that too. But as I say, evolution's not something you can choose not to believe in. I mean, this gets to be, sarcastic and weird. Like you can choose not to believe in gravity for a few moments. But you'll see, pretty quickly, if you jump off a building, you'll see right away. You're headed for trouble.
Indeed.
It's not the fall, right? Ha 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 ha. It's the sudden stop.
So let's get into the topic of your book a little bit now. So you wrote this
I'm
book.
I'm really proud of it, man.
Partly to address that problem, I think. But who's the audience? Who do you want to read
Everybody in the whole world. No, so I'll tell the story. It's not very long, thank goodness. My friends call me Shiny Object Man. It's a little bit of a problem. So when you go to sit down to write a book that's going to have 100,000 words or something in a row, you have to be disciplined. So I was looking for an editor to help me, and the guy I came across through mutual acquaintances in the business. A guy named Corey Powell, and he's a cool guy. He was editor of Discover magazine, and he contributes to Scientific American. He also contributes to another magazine you may not know called American Scientist. And he said, what we got to do is bottle what you talk about and put it in a book. And that worked out really well. But when he was trying to decide whether or not to work with Shiny Object Man over dinner, he asked me why I was writing the book, because according to him, and it seems quite, when I watch other television shows, people write books just for the sake of having written a book, right? But he asked me, why'd you write this book? And I told him, I want to change the world. I want to change the world. Is that so wrong? And that's when he decided to get on board. So I wrote it for everybody, and I wrote it in English, as that's my native tongue. No, really, and I wrote it in this way that involves me telling stories or anecdotes or my point of view, and there's a reason for that. First of all, it sounds like me, which appeals to some people, and then the other thing is I remember the time I met Ivan the gorilla. No, you don't. Yes, I do. Yes, I do remember, and so. When you talk about how you feel, people can't disagree with that.
So I think the entrenched opponents to your worldview, which is the evolutionary worldview, the worldview that also believes in gravity,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
they may not be the customers, your customers for this book, but certainly people like us who may have occasion to persuade some of them can really benefit from reading it.
Well, the other thing is people who are anxious about it, who are troubled by the idea that we are all descendant from different species that came before. 90% of everything that's ever lived has disappeared. People who are troubled by that, I hope they read the book, because I think it's empowering. And the process of evolution fills me with reverence. I mean, my goodness. As just, to drop another name. I had astronomy from Carl Sagan. And I did. And I was just, look, you guys, I was just some guy in the back of the room, the solar system. That was the name of the course. Still is the name of the course. And I was in the back of the room, and I did okay. And no, I did. I was not like the star student. I did okay. But he was the guy who really, really imbued in me, or gave me the fundamental understanding that since you and I are made of exploded stars, the dust of exploded stars, you and I, all of us, are somehow at least one way that the universe has come to know itself. And that's amazing. That is amazing. And every day it fills me with reverence. And maybe more to the point, it freaks me out.
So your choice of the word reverence is interesting. You debated in February, I think, Ken Ham, the noted or infamous creationist. Did your arguments fill him with reverence?
Well, I would like to think that they gave him, I lit a spark. And I'm not, keep in mind, everybody, that in that debate, in that room, I was not going to convince Ken Ham. I don't know how many people saw it. Anybody saw it? Wow, look at you guys. I love you, man, woman. I was not going to change his mind in 2.5 hours. He's made he's made a career. He's made quite a living on this idea that the earth is 6,000 years old. But my audience was you all, was people online. And that's, I've met many, many science teachers the last few months who told me that they use the debate in class. And that's pretty cool. That's reaching somebody. So what I always say, many of you probably know or have family members who are creationists, or if they're not creationists, they're deeply troubled by the idea that we are descendant from somebody who was not human. Even, again, an old boss joke could be put right there. So people are deeply troubled by that. You're not going to change their minds in one sitting. It's a process. So I hope this book is part of that.
Well, let's get into the book, since the book began in that debate. Perhaps you can start by taking us back to the 1830s. Where
yes.
no,
Hey,
not
Vic,
literally.
Vic,
Please.
I wasn't there.
No.
Yeah.
But you wrote about it.
Yeah.
Recently.
But by the way, Ken Ham, one of his things is historical science and observational science.
Yes.
So if you weren't there to observe it, it doesn't count.
All bets are off.
Yeah. So I'm like, dude, have you ever seen CSI Louisville, or do they have that now? They probably do. Is there a Louisville, Kentucky CSI? I think so. I think there is. There's so many. Yeah, I know Fargo's coming. But
well,
you were saying.
So that's exactly the most interesting point. How could Darwin, just with his collection of observations from a 5-year voyage, without the benefit of Illumina...
DNA! He knew nothing of DNA.
Exactly, yes. How could he have come up with such a far-ranging theory of such predictive value?
He was thoughtful. And what's striking, as so many people have commented, why didn't anybody else think of it before? And it shows you how many, or notice it before, how many expectations must be built into each of us. How many assumptions we make about the universe and our relationship to it, the cosmos and our relationship to it, that are just wrong, and we don't even know it. But I tell a story in the book. My grandmother had lived in looking back, a pretty big house in Washington, D.C. It had 3 bedrooms, which at that time was a pretty big house. And so she had boarders, people who would rent rooms after my uncle and my dad left the house. And there was some guy that would sit at the dinner table talking about chicken bones. And look how the knee is just like the human knee, but it's reversed, and isn't this cool? And look at this cartilage, it's just like human cartilage. And my grandmother, who was quite the naturalist, she would collect wildflowers, she was really something, thought that was cool, but my grandfather was somehow deeply troubled by this. He went to church and stuff in a very traditional way. But even this guy noticed these connections. Why didn't anybody else notice these connections before is really quite a thing. And Darwin realized, apparently, I'm not an expert on Darwin, but he apparently spent a lot of time making sure he had everything worked out. He ran, I don't know if you've ever read The Origin of Species and Descent by Natural Selection, but he did all these experiments with roses and bees and barnacles. I mean, he was just really into it to make sure what he was observing, his hypothesis, was correct. And then this guy, Russell Wallace, and there's a whole bunch of people, and I'm right there with you, who celebrate Russell Wallace as he came up with the same idea at the same time, and why isn't there a Russell Wallace Society, and why don't we have Russell Wallace Day, and why isn't Russell Wallace on our dollar bills? And okay. He was 16 years younger than Darwin. Darwin had a little head start on him. And Darwin's book, where he's got both the hypothesis or the theory of evolution and the experiments backing it up in one volume. That's why Darwin's name is so closely tied.
And it's a very accessible book even today.
Yeah, even now, it's very readable.
So, why isn't Darwin on any currency?
Well, he is in Britain.
Is he?
Darwin's on dollar bills, on bills in Britain.
Oh, interesting. So can you take us through some of the more contemporary evidence for Darwin's theories? Let's start with geology and the fossil record. I know you do this very well in the book.
Well, you guys, I went to school in Ithaca, New York, and you can walk around in Ithaca. You don't have to be any sort of amazing geology guy, and you can find trilobite fossils, zillions of them. Trilobites lived something like 238 million years. I mean, way longer than humans have been on Earth, by a factor of 100, I guess. Factor of 100, not 100, a factor of 100. And so you find all those fossils. How'd they all get there, for crying out loud? And then Darwin wrestled with this, and how does a new species come into existence? Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's just a cool story. I don't know if you know about the mosquitoes in the London Underground, the tube. So apparently the mosquitoes were living in the underground when they dug all these tunnels in the late 1800s. There were mosquitoes living down there, and they would feed on people like you and me. And they would generally, I mean, if you're a mosquito, you feed on a few people, and then they close the subway. You go back upstairs at night and feed on some other people. But then when World War II came along, they used the underground stations as bomb shelters. And it's quite effective. I mean, getting bombed kind of sucks. But it was quite effective. But this really accelerated the certain mosquitoes. Pipiens has become molestus. The mosquito that buzzes, Pipian, has become the mosquito that annoys. So there's apparently a new species of mosquito evolving in the London Underground right now. Now it's still, and furthermore, you can see the spectrum. Most of the underground mosquitoes cannot breed with the above grounds. The Pipians cannot breed with the molestus, but there are a few that still can. Like you can see that there's a spectrum of this new species coming into existence, like in real time, like it's like you're in one person's lifetime. And that's amazing. It's amazing. It's not surprising, really, but it's amazing.
So what connects these contemporary examples of speciation, and there are a couple that you go over in your book, including evolution of antibiotic resistance and other things short of speciation. What connects that with this historical fossil record? Is it DNA evidence? How do you know how old the fossils are?
Oh, I see. Well, how many people have not taken geology? I mean, just, I don't know you guys. I don't know how you live. I don't know any about your habits, but you'll find that the older dirty clothes that you've discarded on the floor are underneath the more recent dirty clothes. And the same is true in geology with respect to sediments and overlays and so on. And I'm not the world's foremost geologist, but I can tell you the stuff at the bottom of the Grand Canyon's older than the stuff at the top. And that's, I don't make the rules, as we say. So the other just amazing thing, you know, just sort of discovered in my father's lifetime, my grandfather's lifetime, is radioactivity and how you can work backwards. And people throw out the word carbon dating. Carbon dating, it's fine. That's not what we're talking about. Carbon dating is good on like tens of thousands of years. Radiometric dating, where you have, I mean, who doesn't love rubidium and strontium? These are elements that, you know, are out there, and they're radioactive. And I like that one in many ways. First of all, its half-life of rubidium becoming strontium is 48.8 billion years. Billion years. And it's a case where one of the neutrons in rubidium becomes a proton. It goes up the periodic table, giving off some electrons and neutrinos. Who wouldn't? And so then these things are chemically in the same column on the periodic table as calcium and sodium, so that in the melt, as these guys love, who doesn't love the melt? The melt, like you're talking about molten rocks, you're talking about Hawaii or someplace. These things are all mixed in, but once they freeze, once it cools off, then chemically, some of the rubidium, some of the strontium is replaced by some of the sodium, some of the calcium, and then you can work this clock backwards. This is amazing. It's amazing. And that was discovered long after Darwin's writing this book. I mean, it's just cool. Just think what else we just don't know anything about right under our noses. Wow.
Of course, to believe in that, you have to believe in the
Everything.
inviolability of physical laws, which, as we saw in your debate, that's not always been the case.
Yeah, so one of the extraordinary claims this guy makes, these people make, is that physical laws are mutable. You can just change them. Super guy shows up and goes, I'm in the speed of light. I'm gonna quintuple it for a while without telling anyone. It just, you know, it's unreasonable. And this wouldn't matter. Vic, would not matter. This guy can spend his millions of dollars and build his thing and run around doing his stuff. But they have this enormous program to indoctrinate kids, people in kindergarten, that the earth is 6,000 years old. And all these things on how to defend your otherwise completely unreasonable belief and so on. And that's what's really troubling.
I agree. So tell us a bit, and you outline this in your book in greater detail, about the parallel line of evidence from modern DNA sequencing methods that also establishes.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, it's
life.
amazing. So you guys, you know, there's mutations that happen natural. I mean, every time you try to make a copy, there's going to be a change. Sometimes the change is significant. Most of the time it's not. It's just in the noise. What do you guys call it? Healthy software? What's it? Healthy code. Healthy coding.
Yes.
Yeah, where you just leave old code in the thing because you don't want to mess with it. Then it turns out there's some bug in there. Smoke comes out. Yeah, so there's a lot of apparently a lot of leftover DNA that doesn't do, we can't figure out what it does right now. It doesn't seem to make any change. But there are very significant changes. And so these things happen regularly, like a clock. So you can assess the speed at which DNA is changing, and then you can work back to when the Neanderthals and us were apparently hunting the same game and interacting. Can we say interacting here?
Yes, I think, in fact, you need not use the euphemism, but
they were doing it. They were jumping each other. They were having sex. They had sexual intercourse.
So actually,
interaction. That whole interact culture that's emerged now.
It brings me to my next question, and it's an important topic in evolution. I think you spend the majority of the book on this. So I'd like to read from one chapter.
Oh, I love you. He's reading.
So the
No, that's worthy.
the chapter is called "My Prom and Sexual Selection." So it begins, being a nerd. I did not anticipate going to my high school prom. Nevertheless, I did. I was driven to do so, apparently, by the shape of life's legs. Leith, excuse me.
Yep.
A clearly female classmate. This fascination with sex is, near as anyone can tell, not something we get to choose. Our ancestors bequeathed it to us. It is another one of those deeply shared evolutionary traits, a drive that we cannot disengage. So what's the role of sexual reproduction in evolution?
That's an old mystery, but we have an excellent theory as to why sex is so popular. And not just among people. Dandelions and sea jellies, barnacles, they're all doing it like crazy out there. And so it's complicated. You know, one of the things that I often reflect on is the lilies of the field, they do not toil, nor do they sow. They don't do anything. Actually, if you're a lily, you are busting your empennage to make flowers. I mean, all the energy you put into making ova of eggs and pollen, it's a tremendous amount of work. And the reason it's done, apparently, is because of parasites. So your enemy, if you're a multicellular organism like us, your enemy in general is not a lion, a tiger, or a bear. Those, of course, are trouble, as well documented in the film. But your main problem is germs and parasites. So germs, if they're bacteria, they're reproducing like crazy. I mean, they double in just a few hours. You'll have unchecked, enormous populations of germs. But it takes us months, and after all the negotiation and going out to dinner and all that stuff, it takes a long time. And then when the kid's born, you're looking at nothing. You got years more on top of that, right? So apparently, sex is a way to come up with a new combination of genes that the germs, parasites just can't quite keep up with. And this is charmingly referred to as the theory of the Red Queen. But the guy was British, so the Red Queen. And apparently Alice in Wonderland is in Through the Looking Glass, the second book. And she meets the Red Queen, who's, my understanding, Lewis Carroll, I don't know if he smoked dope, but he probably did. And so the Red Queen is like this chess piece person, and she's sliding around on the chessboard of life. And so when you're talking to her, you have to run all the time. But it's not explained about the queen's legs or her felt bottom, whatever chess pieces have. And so Alice says, you know, where I come from, if you run all day, you end up somewhere else. And the queen says, well, that seems like a very slow sort of country. And so this is the idea of evolution. If you stop running, you will fall off the treadmill of life. You will disappear. So this having sex, new combination of genes is how you stay in the game. And the predictive quality of the theory of evolution just really comes into play. And I mentioned this in Kentucky, and I mentioned it again in the book. These crazy fish in Mexico, the top minnows is how we say it in English. When there's not enough when there are not enough mates around, they just become what Darwin called asexual, but we might call it double sexual. They just start reproducing without doing it. And then those reproduced fish are more susceptible to parasites. But then when it rains again and there's a whole bunch of ponds to swim around in, and the fish population gets big again, then they go back to sexual reproduction. Crazy. Humans don't do that. I mean, a lot is said about it nowadays, but humans don't do that. It's not the thing.
There's actually one aspect of human sexuality I think that you don't touch upon in the book. Just one.
Because it fascinates me, yeah.
And that's, of course, for thousands of years, we've known that same-sex relationships are perfectly
yeah.
normal, documented, and there's an increasing body of literature which suggests some genetic causes as well as epigenetic causes.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So what's the evolutionary theoretical thinking on homosexuality?
Well, I'm not an expert on this, but I can tell you, in the word that people throw around nowadays, it's a spectrum. I think being homosexual guy is clearly not genetically lethal. Homosexual guys have babies, have kids all the time. And so there's some blur. And also my understanding, I'm not an expert on this, but apparently it's a very common, people always presume that human female sexuality is more fluid than male sexuality. But apparently human male homosexuals often have a period of having a crush or a thing for a woman, a female human. So it must be it's just because it doesn't kill you, because it doesn't keep you from having babies, it's still out there, or it's out there, or it's out there, it's always been out there. But I'm not an expert on that, and I'm telling you there's an evolutionary reason for it. There's got to be.
Yeah, absolutely. No,
it's got to be consistent with the theory of evolution, whatever it turns out to be.
There have been some papers and articles recently on this subject relating to kin selection and altruism, which are some of the counterintuitive aspects of evolutionary theory. Maybe we can get into those now. At first, yes. Yeah. So religious or proponents of creationism, they often claim that there is no altruism in the evolutionary model. Perhaps you can
without
explain how that's
without
wrong.
the religion, there'd be no altruism. Yeah. No, apparently altruism is... For those of you, it's a word not everybody uses all the time. The drive to help somebody else out, to help out another member of your species. And the example that I just am charmed by are the bats. Because I spent time, anybody see the Bill Nye Caves show? That was a great one. It was really good. No, it was later on, and we had a budget. And so we flew to Carlsbad Cavern in New Mexico, and it was just cool. But we were able to be right there with the bats. And there are a lot of bats, you guys. So apparently the bats go out, they eat mosquitoes all night. Not everybody is a good mosquito hunter, bat-wise. And so if a bat comes back to the roost and has not had enough to eat, one of the other bats will, out of courtesy, barf up some mosquito barf and they feed the other guy.
Interesting.
Now, why would they do that? And as I say in the book, that hungry bat should not have been wearing those headphones and listening to that rock and roll music. He should have been echolocating and eating mosquitoes at very high speed and so on. But why do they do that? Well, apparently it's to preserve their tribe, their roost, and it's their rookery. It's a heck of a thing. I mean, and I talk about humans. When it's you guys can do this thought experiment. And it's an experiment, okay? I mean, it's a game. It's a game theory. It's creepy. House is on fire. You're only allowed to save one person. That's a rule. Do you save your mother let's see. Let me just hang on. Do you save your grandmother, your mother, or your own kid? And you save your own kid because you are driven to reach as far into the genetic future as possible. With that said, humans are always helping out other humans. I mean, without that, nearly that close of a genetic connection. The guy, you remember when this building was burning in Texas and this construction worker was there and they got the fire truck ladder right up to it and the guy jumped off, whoa! And then the building collapsed. And everybody's like, nobody said, well, should he have done that? That was very dangerous. No, this is what humans do. We just help out other humans. And apparently that's deep within us. And I don't want to cause no trouble, but that seems to be deeper within us and older than the invention or discovery or whatever the expression is of religions.
Sure.
So it's not clear the cause and effect there.
No, absolutely. So perhaps we can go over one or two other really counterintuitive aspects of evolution. So one that you describe
God, you
again,
read the book, Vic. I love you, man. No, a lot of times you get interviewed by people just in too much hurry to actually read the book because they got stuff to do. And they just look at the chapter titles. Go ahead.
So, biodiversity.
Biodiversity.
Yeah, how does it fit into evolutionary theory?
Well, it is reasonable that the longer life has been in any one place, the more diverse it becomes. The more longer species have been generating, interacting with humans in the subway or what have you, the more species you get. And not surprisingly, where there's the most sunlight, the most energy coming in from outer space, that's where the most diversity is, at the equator or near the equator. In tropical rainforests is where you have the most diversity. Then as you go north or south from the equator, there's less diversity. With that said, it doesn't mean that there are fewer individuals. If you've ever flown over the forest in Canada or Pacific Northwest, there's just trees and trees and trees and trees. But there's actually less diversity of trees, less different types of plants and animals there than in the Amazon. And that's absolutely consistent with the way species come to be. It's what you'd expect. Now, one of the great mysteries right now, and you guys may be alive when this is figured out, well, of course, the fundamental mystery is how did it all get started? Where did we come from, man? Dude. And I talk about this all the time at the planetary side. Where did we come from, and are we alone? Those are the deep, deep questions. But it's very reasonable that life started in the deep sea in one of these hydrothermal vents where there's all this hot water and salt and nutrients. But hot water and nutrients and heat. I guess hot water would have heat, wouldn't it? Okay, thank you, Bill. Or did it start on land with lightning strikes from a scraping atmosphere on the Earth's surface and roiling and these guys? I tell the story. I walked at Cornell University. I went to Cornell, you guys. Don't bust their chops. Go Big Red. But don't bust. I'm sure it was a mistake on their part. They did not intend to let me in. It just once I was there, they were kind of stuck. But there's a whole building called Space Sciences, made of cinder block. It's not a great looking building, but on the third floor, I walked in one day on the Urey-Miller experiment. And I was I still am mechanical engineer, Doug. I have a license, people. But I walked in there, and if you've ever heard of this thing, the Urey-Miller experiments, where these guys tried to reproduce the primordial atmosphere of the Earth and then spark it with lightning and to see if anything would happen. And indeed, they got 1 zillion amino acids, carbon with oxygen on it. And so then, wow, that's evidence of life. Wow, that could be, but it's not quite alive. And so this goes back, these questions go back, where did we all come from? So did it start on the surface, or did it start in the deep ocean? Maybe you guys will figure that out.
Well, actually, I do want to discuss the work of your planetary society. Let me
love you, man.
introduce that again. I think it's a natural correlate of evolutionary thinking. So you write at the end of your book, at the end of the journey of this book, I find myself thinking about the end journey of evolution itself, not just human evolution, but the process as a whole. I have long wondered whether there is some kind of cosmic imperative for life to spread from world to world. On Earth, we see that organisms colonize every possible niche. We see that living things move into new environments and beget new species. Is life destined to colonize the solar system, the Milky Way, and ultimately to spread out through the whole universe? So you don't answer the question.
I don't know, man. So, you guys were living at a time where, so you guys are all big, successful engineers, right? You write, when I left, it was Fortran 7. When I went to school, we had punch cards, and I had a slide rule. And those not the good old days. But where would you be working if you weren't working at Google? SpaceX, right? You want to work at SpaceX. And I know. But I just tell everybody, when do you guys know the motto of the state of California? Anybody? Eureka. Yeah, Eureka. I found it. And so these European people come over the hill And there's salmon in the Sacramento River like this. I mean, it's all the protein you'd ever want. Apparently the Indians, the first Nation people from the Pacific Northwest, are generally, by archaeologists, considered the richest people in the Americas, because they had all these salmon. It had just an infinite protein, so they could just mess around with other projects. But these guys come over the hill, and orange trees are like weeds. And then at one point in California, the rocks are made of gold. Like the rocks are gold. We still have the San Francisco 49ers, for crying out loud. But when you go to Mars, you guys, it ain't like that. I'm sorry. It's hostile. It's freezing cold. There is no liquid water. And when you open the door of the spaceship, you will find out right away you cannot breathe. You will notice that. And so I want to go to Mars, but I want to come back. I want to go look for signs of life on Mars. Yes, yes, yes. If we discovered life on another world in our lifetime, it would utterly, utterly change this world. It would change the way everybody thinks about everything. And we can do it, you guys, for $2 billion. Let's go. We can go out there and have a look. So
let's talk about Mars a little bit more. There's flowing water on Mars. There's perhaps good reason to believe that life, maybe even as we know it, existed there. Oh, how would you find it?
Well, so a couple things. Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. My father was quite the rock hound. You know this expression, some of my best friends? Some of my best friends are geologists, really. And I love rocks. Every rock tells a story. I got right there. But what we're doing right now, we spend about $1.5 billion a year on planetary science. Now, to put that in perspective, the NASA budget is $17.7 billion a year. And people, how much, if you ask people on the street, what percentage of the U.S. federal budget is the NASA budget? Somebody will say 10%. It's 0.4%. So $1.5 billion is 9% of 0.4%. And if we were to just up that a little, so that the expression that these guys love is the landing ellipse, so that the spacecraft could be targeted to Mars more accurately, then 60-kilometer long. Whoa, that's pretty close. Yeah. I mean, let me tell you guys, if you're looking for something to eat and you're off by 60 kilometers, you're going to be hungry, okay? So what if we spent more money and tightened that up and then made these cool, extraordinary robots that could rappel in rock climber fashion down the side of a hill on Mars and get where there might be super salty, slushy water on a Martian summer day, and then maybe you'd find fossil microbes, but wait, maybe there'd be something still alive. And we could do that for, $1.8 billion a year for 10 or 12 years. We could do that. Just have to be motivated. And let alone if we spent Apollo kind of money on it, we could get her done. And it would change the freaking world. It would absolutely change the world. And this is the romance of it for me, and we are uniquely qualified to do this. Well, we should be paying teacher salaries, and we shouldn't be... Yes. If you're a politician, the problem is not should we pay teachers, should we go to Mars. We have to do it all. And the other thing I just remind you guys, and I know we're in New York, we're all a bunch of progressive, bleeding heart, liberal, crazy people, but remind you guys that when you invest in space exploration especially, the return on it is extraordinary. You guys would not have jobs without the space program. The internet would not exist without the U.S. space program. And then you talk about all the materials, everybody loves his Teflon and his Velcro and stuff, but it's the expectation that you can get things done in the big way. That's what the space exploration brings to us. So that's why I advocate for it right now. And then along that line, I just remind everybody that climate change in the modern era, it was discovered in the 1900s, in the 19th century. Really. And Benjamin Franklin speculated about it. But in the modern era, climate change was discovered really on Venus, yes. The planet Venus. And so Space exploration just brings out the best in us, and that's
including
why.
by Carl Sagan and others.
Well,
right?
Carl
Jim
Sagan. So
Hansen.
I like to say, yeah, James Hansen, that the computer models that we use even today for climate modeling are based really on the original ones from the 1970s and right around the year 1980 is when people really. Were you guys even freaking born in 1980? I suck. It was right there where disco was giving way to punk and new wave, and the important work of Sid Vicious and the Sex Pistols. Sorry, I don't get it. I never got it.
So the subject is actually related to some of the questions that the audience is
oh, here we
raising.
are tweeting. That's how we roll.
It's our version of that.
Oh,
I should say.
sorry, my
Yes.
bad. Whoa. We're geeking. What are we? We're
Whose
geeking.
name I forget, I must admit. But we don't have an Apollo program. Some of us who grew up in the 80s, we were nevertheless motivated by space exploration, human spaceflight. Now we're faced with really existential problems where science is the only solution. But there's nothing really to motivate people to go into science.
Well, that's our job.
So
here at Google.
What is it? What's the role for Google, and what's the role for big government science?
Well, see, we're in a okay. I have an issue now. There are people in elected office who feel that government is bad. Like, why did you take this gig, man? That feel that government should be shrunk as much as possible and destroyed. I mean, or as that guy, the anti-tax guy, says, to put in a bathtub and drown. I just really disagree with that. The New York City subway takes 1 billion passengers a year. You absolutely could not do that in the libertarian society. You just couldn't. Sorry, man. And I don't want 2 sets of sewers, 2 sets of phone lines, 2 sets of cell towers. And so, phone line, sorry, older reference. Sorry. There used to be, I don't know if you knew this, but there used to be copper wires that transmitted voice. It was okay. It was not much bandwidth. It was all right. It's all right. It was a long time ago. It's like, it was, yeah, it was more than
80s.
2 years ago, yeah. It was still in the 10s, the 2010s, 20 aughts. One of the things about climate change that is something for everybody to consider, people who are against government intrusion, government getting into your business, I think are going to have, they're really going to be troubled by what's going to be required to address climate change. And the model for this is in my parents' day, World War II. You couldn't just buy tires for your car. You couldn't just buy meat. You couldn't buy certain vegetables, especially certain times of year. You just couldn't. They weren't available because the man stepped in and sent it to the boys to conduct the war. And that was government intrusion in a way that, you know, people talk about the greatest generation. Part of the reason that people consider them great because they work together. And to address climate change is going to be that same deal. I mean, the sooner we get started, the better for me.
And what role do you see more specifically for large corporations like Google?
Like Google, man.
What do you want?
No,
us
the
to do?
key to the future, kids, peoples. You are it. You are IT. Wait. No, you are it, because the key to the future is not just to do less. I grew up, I am so old. I remember the very first Earth Day. Very first Earth Day was in 1970, before Motown really was called Motown. The Motor City existed, but the music, although it existed, didn't have that sobriquet. Anyway, digress, me? No,
Perhaps
so
there's no easy answer.
No. So in those days, everybody wanted you to do less, to drive your car less, to use less clean water, so wear dirty clothes. And humans are bad. Humans don't belong in the ecosystem. Humans have nothing to do with nature. Get rid of humans. In fact, if you can, just don't eat. Don't even eat, really. And that turned out to be, as you might imagine, not especially popular. And so the key to the future is not to do less. The key is to do more with less. And that's where companies like Google enable this in an amazing way. Do you know how many hours people my age spent in the freaking library? I mean, going to look things up in a card catalog was a skill you developed. But the difference was when you found stuff in encyclopedia, if you found the atomic number of strontium, 38, in Encyclopedia Britannica, it was almost certainly correct. There was no issue with that. Whereas now, when you look on Wikipedia, you just don't know what you're going to get. So it's a new skill that students have to develop, is how to sift through this greater volume of lower quality information. But the world will be better because not everybody has to get in the car or the subway to commute. People can commute from their phone and get, like the Planetary Society, people are extraordinarily productive without ever coming into the office, I have to say. That doesn't mean I don't want you to come to the office, you guys. I'm sorry if you're out there. And so Google is a key to doing more with less. But somewhere along the line, you guys, somebody's going to have to make electricity. You know, you can have all the server farms you want, but if you can't plug them in, we're in bad shape. And this is when, is it true that robots are going to take over the world? I mean, if somebody keeps shoveling coal for them, I guess, yeah. But if you stop making electricity, the robots will really have a hard time of it, generally. No, they'll make nuclear power plants. Okay, all right, maybe. It's not so simple, yeah. So go ahead, sorry.
So,
hold it, it says right here. We're
So
not going to do
there-
any, whoa, I've blown it. Sorry, go
so
ahead.
there is really no easy answer. It's something that we all have to struggle to.
When it comes to climate change, in my opinion, the answer is to do everything we possibly can all at once. How's that? More efficient electricity, more efficient transportation is a huge cost, especially in the U.S. More efficient cities, more efficient farms in the biggest picture. And, of course, raising the quality of life, especially of women and girls. Because deep within this problem, when I was here at the World's Fair in 1965, I was 9 years old. The world had just gotten 3 billion people. Well, a few days ago, I checked, we're at 7.2 billion people. And that's it. You've more than doubled the number of humans burning and breathing the atmosphere in the last 2 decades. I mean, that's your problem. So we need to reduce the human population. We do. But I mean, this is, you guys, and we don't do it. By the way, war is completely ineffective. Ebola will not do it. No, and you can see it historically. The scale of the problem is huge. Well, if you raise the standard of living of women and girls, over the next century and a half, the human population will stabilize and go down.
Sure.
And the way to do that is to educate women and girls. This is a really huge problem. Yeah. But let's get going, people. We can change the world. Thanks, you guys. I love you guys.
So
Yes.
we don't have time for audience questions, but there was for live questions. There was one last question that I wanted to.
Dead questions are very troubling. Yeah.
There's one last question from the screen that I wanted to discuss with you. It's really again on the subject of evolution. How can individuals debate their family members, others who are creationists or who don't understand evolutionary theory?
So, you guys, that is your job. People ask me, I see a few of these questions. What's the most important thing you could do? What's the single, if you had to do one thing, what would you do? Who's the target audience? Oh, I see the Higgs boson. Let me just say, you guys, I'm not so sure. 5 sigma is good, but it ain't 9 sigma. It ain't 7 sigma. All right? I've said it. Okay? I've said it. I believe in 5 sigma, but compare a Toyota to a Detroit car. Toyota designs at 5 sigma, Detroit designs at 3. Compare and contrast.
There may have to be some retractions now.
No, I'm just saying. So the single most important thing we can all do right now, I believe, is talk about climate change. Just raise awareness. Just make it part of our everyday conversation. Because we are all living in a little bit of denial of climate change. And I'm the first to say, me too. I as well, mea culpa, is by raising awareness of climate change, we will get something done. Now, just by way of example, my dad took a job in 1941 on Wake Island. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. You go to Hawaii and then you go about that far again to Wake. It's still a tactically important place. There are about 700 U.S. Air Force landings there, airplane landings there a year. When you went to Asia in the old days, you'd fly from San Francisco to Pearl Harbor to Wake, and then on to Midway, usually in Shanghai in China. But without Wake Island, you couldn't make that trip. Anyway, everybody thought, well, things are going to be okay. There's never going to be a war in the Pacific. World War II is never going to come to the U.S. Everything's going to be fine. And my dad took that job, and then he ended up in prison camp for 4 years. And so I don't recommend that, by the way. But people in the U.S., and just looking at historically, and this new movie came out about Turing and Alan Turing and everything, people just thought the problem is so big it won't happen. And I think we're all doing that with respect to climate change. So talk about it. Talk about climate change. Talk about evolution. Get in fights over the Isaac Newton's birthday holidays Christmas table. Isaac Newton was born on Christmas Day, by the way, as reckoned in Britain. In Italy, it was the 4th of January. They were still not agreeing on the calendar. But I always say Isaac Newton's mom thought it was Christmas Day, for crying out loud. So you guys just talk about climate change. And then together, I strongly believe, as I look at history and the greatest generation and what have you, we can do this. We can change the world. So thank you all so much. Thank you for coming.